And we're very pleased now to welcome John Miles Murphy, who was one of the founders of the great University of Phoenix. And now he has dedicated himself to the writing and producing of a film on a controversial lynching of two men in San Jose, California in 1933. It's entitled Valley of the Heart's Delight, which opens in October. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So you're a filmmaker. Well, you have obviously this is something that you had a lot of passion for. This story is an important story to you. Why is this an important story? Why did it move you for so many years?
It moved me because, to all appearances to the contrary, from the newspaper reporting and accounts of law enforcement at the time this went through about the absolute guilt of the two men that were arrested
for kidnapping
and murder of a young man who was the son of a wealthy retailer in San Jose. His name was Brooke Hart in 1933. And as I did the research years ago, and when I was helping build the University of Phoenix, I would periodically sort of go back and take a shot at writing something about it. But once I left there in 97, turned my attention to this story in great detail and learned how to write a screenplay. And my story, which is fictionalized, is based on the only eyewitness account of the actual kidnapping, which happened a half an hour after the young man was taken from outside the department store in downtown San Jose, about 8 to 10 miles outside San Jose in Milpitas. And a big car pulled up, turned the headlights off, and a woman and her daughter, lived in a farm out there, saw three men in the car. Moments later, a car that turned out to be that of the kidnapped victim pulled up with a man standing on each running board, and someone, her description of the young man later matched who he was, and it turned out to be his car, and then they took off. The FBI and the sheriff went about an elaborate process of verifying their recollection, interviewed the mother and daughter separately in different places before they could compare notes. The next night came out, brought cars, including the young man's car, and set it up like they said they did in the distances over which they said they heard distinct conversations, and verified it. And the FBI agent, Reed Vetterly, sent Hoover a telegram saying Brooke Hart kidnapped, 5 men did it, and they ended up arresting 2 men and charging them for the crime.
Now, they allegedly, let's pull back. Well, that's the story. This is the last public lynching in California?
No, there were 2 subsequent.
But the last one in the Bay Area?
Last one in the Bay Area. One in Santa Rosa and one in Siskiyou County, I think.
There were 10,000 people who witnessed it,
right,
including journalists and responsible people. As I understand it, and we will have a link to the trailer, it's an exquisite feature film. It's not a documentary type film. It's a true Hollywood production. You were concerned to try to tap into what happens to a mob, or what happens to people's perception when they, let's say, are either prejudiced or led to believe something is true.
Well, in this instance, when the 2 men were arrested, there was never any objection or opposition to the thought that they might be innocent was summarily dismissed by everyone. And as the case progressed, the governor of the state then, Sonny Jim Rolfe, the former mayor of San Francisco, when asked if he'd send out the troops to protect these guys because of all the lynching threats, he refused to.
So what drove this crowd of 10,000 people? That's a lot of people.
Well, I think what drove it were a number of things. One, they had a committee of justice in San Jose comprised of all the civic and business leaders of the town, the most well-known, well-respected judges, business owners, attorneys, civic leaders who met privately and quietly. In fact, Royce Breyer of the Chronicle won a Pulitzer Prize for writing about this story back in 1933. They were pushing for it.
Pushing for a lynching?
Pushing for seeing that justice was done. And I think the trigger point came when the U.S. attorney, because the district attorney in Santa Clara County hadn't indicted them, convinced the federal grand jury to indict them for violation of the postal laws because they used the mails to.
You haven't shown me how you get to a passionate crowd of 10,000.
Let me just get to that.
Okay.
So the U.S. Marshals went to get these guys who'd been taken to San Francisco for safekeeping, and the jailer wouldn't give it to them, and they were brought back to San Jose. And I think, in my estimation of what occurred there, it appeared to the locals, and this is certainly cannot be given any more weight than my sort of informed conjecture about it, but I believe that they thought that these guys were going to be only charged with using a mailbox for which there's no capital penalty. They pay a fine.
What is your film? How does your film handle it?
My film basically takes the approach. It's really more of it's a dramatic narrative, and it involves a much more complicated involvement of characters in the story to tell. As I tell the story, I have a young reporter who works for the publisher of a conservative newspaper in San Jose who writes a story that gets him fired by this guy because it violates
Who plays that character?
Gabriel Mann is the young man who plays the reporter. He's been in the Bourne movies. He's sort of an up-and-coming young guy.
Which movies?
The Bourne movies, Matt Damon,
the
Bourne Identity, and he just finished a film last year with Sam Shepard and Jessica Lange, which I can't think of the name of it. And the publisher is played by Pete Postlethwaite, who is a character actor you might remember from Usual Suspects or Brassed Off. He was latest one I remember is Constant Gardener. He played the doctor out in the backcountry.
Did you produce this film?
I did. Yes.
Did you cast it yourself?
I had a casting director, and I worked with a local director named Tim Boxell. He and I and the casting director looked at all the tapes, and he brought people in to a casting studio we set up here.
In San Francisco. Did you do this film in San Francisco?
We did the entire thing in San Francisco.
See, now that's amazing. There are not many films being done here anymore.
Well,
certainly not indoors.
Well, I have even something more. This was a union film on top of that, as a low budget agreement with the unions, and I think I had more SAG members. I had 72 featured speaking parts. We probably had 200 or 300 extras that show up for the mob scenes and so forth. Put more people to work, which I was happy to do. Some very talented people here.
Where did you shoot the indoor shots?
Indoor shots we found in the jail was in. I live here in San Francisco, and every day I usually go through the Presidio, and I know it pretty well.
Yeah.
Exercise, and I found this
this
place that looked like it was a jail, and I asked the local people who went there, and that was there. We shot in the Presidio. We shot in Pacific Heights in a home. We shot actually in Old Oakland, and Alameda, and up in the Oakland Hills.
You've won a couple of awards already. I mean, it hasn't been released yet. It's not going to be released till October. But right. You've won a couple of cinematography awards. The photography is exquisite.
Well, our cinematographer is a gentleman named Hiro Narita, who's one of the most accomplished, talented cinematographers with just exquisite classical taste that doesn't let the camera get in the way of the story, that really, in the most subtle and informative and emotionally helpful ways, brings the story along. We had our costume designer, Kathleen Edwards, who has never did a film before. She's done a lot of stage work here in San Francisco, who put together, we rented 500 1930s costumes from Warner Brothers. She came and put it together so it looks absolutely authentic. We found neighborhoods like in Alameda that we could look like the 30s.
Do you think more companies can do films here? They claim that they have to now go to Vancouver, not even or elsewhere. Is San Francisco still viable besides the shots of the Golden Gate Bridge or outdoor shots for a movie?
Well, I've written another script that we set in San Francisco that I'm not going to produce because it's a very it's a contemporary sort of action kind of thing, totally unlike what I just did.
Yeah.
But it was fun to do. I think there's more talent per square foot here.
I've heard that.
The actors that played the extra parts were truly extraordinary. The people.
In terms of equipment and props, I heard props are always the most difficult thing. In terms of sound stages, props, and all that, is the Bay Area suited to do feature films?
I believe it is. I mean, we had Douglas Freeman was our designer and put together anything we needed without a problem. The lighting was fantastic. All the equipment, the support systems, the crafts table with the food on it. I was telling a friend earlier that this is my first film that I've ever done, and one of the most gratifying things, regardless of how it's received or if it ever makes money, was being able to put to work and see in action the talent of people that don't get that opportunity to work on a feature film.
Yes.
They do a lot of advertisements and that kind of stuff, where they make much more money, and they all took a cut to be able to do this, but they were so happy to get a real story with real characters, and it's got some, it's an old-fashioned film in the sense it's a linear progression. The characters develop. You have to pay attention.
I want to go back to that in the last couple of minutes. Do you believe that this was a kind of a thoughtful conspiracy, or my impression, I thought, was that this was a story about a setup, but then the power of a mob to go crazy and to do something like this?
Well, it happened because the governor of the state came out the day before and said, "I'll pardon anybody who does it."
He said that?
Yes. Jim Rolfe said that. He said he refused to call out the troops on the day of the lynching, 2 hours before it was going to happen. He canceled the trip out of state to the Western Governor's Conference so the lieutenant governor wouldn't call out the troops. The sheriff issued an order not to shoot anybody. They got phone calls into the jail saying, "Send over the hearse at 11 o'clock."
So this was a conspiracy.
I call it. I call it jury fixing in the court of public opinion.
Did they also manipulate the crowd, in other words?
Well, on the day of the lynching, there were bulletin after bulletin on the radios going, "There's going to be a lynching tonight, St. James Park. Get down there," all day long.
Bulletin on the
radio. A guy in L.A., an announcer, did a live feed from the lynching. You had 200 news reporters there from all over California. You had the FBI knew about it. Everyone knew about it. No one in any meaningful form tried to stop it. And during the time that these guys were charged with the crime, with the exception of the father, one of the lynch victims, did anybody raise their voice in opposition to these guys how to get a fair trial?
We only have about a minute left.
Sure.
But the passion for you to do this, what was it that you were trying? Why did you spend so much of your life doing this? What is the lesson there? I'm sure it's not just an art film. Got 1 minute. Going back to that core of your passion, what made you want to do this?
What I saw in it was an exploration of the sort of otherwise ordinary people of life who get into positions of power and make decisions that affect the rest of us in ways that we can never recover from. And in this instance, I believe that the powers that be,
including the governor,
set these two guys up and allowed this to happen because of who they were, and that they said it was okay to do it.
Do you think the film did that?
The film is.
Do you think it accomplished what you wanted?
I'm very proud of the film and what it did.
Well, I think now we'll be appearing here in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area
in October.
In October, and it just depends on how it does in the box. It's real simple, Arthur. It's how many tickets you sell.
Exactly. Well, we have a trailer. It will be linked at our website, and they'll see that this is a beautiful film. I look forward to seeing it.
Thank you so much for having me.
So thank you, Jon Murphy, for being here, and thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time. Visit our website at www.sfunscripted.com.